Normally, I like to make sure, if I'm not talking and doing it at the same time, I do a pretty good job of making sure that I've caught this, but these lights should have been off because now they're warm and that's screwing up the signature, but still it doesn't change the fact that you can see the fingers, that splay, the kind of like sunlight effect, that is air leakage. So that means that there's air leakage coming through those recessed lights, which will raise the temperature of this room, of any other room that has recessed lights in it. So again, I'm going to take a picture of that. And I'm just going to, in this case, assume, unless I prove otherwise, that every single recessed light in this house is exactly the same as that. And then I can call out specific ones if they're not actually.
Well, I paid to have them put like a little box on and tape it.
You did pay them?
Yeah. They're on there.
Not me.
Oh, okay, good.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I like that.
That does not work.
Corbett's looking at me like, Brian, I don't want to call you out here. You guys did a crappy job. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, so this is how you do this, right? If you hire a company to do air sealing work, their responsibility is to use a blower door, test beforehand, take a picture of it. Test after they're done, take a picture of it. The picture should be different.
Yeah, no. I just wrote them a check. They were in and out of here in an afternoon. And
Exactly, yeah. So they did what?
because I asked them, I said, how do I know that you're even doing anything up there?
Exactly, because they could be playing on Facebook for 5 hours in your attic, and you wouldn't know because you're not going to go up there.
Right.
So yeah, that is the evidence, is whether the diagnostic proof of before and after is different.
Yeah.
And if you don't trust their test, you can hire a third party and have them test it as well. But yeah, that's essentially what you're looking at. Okay, so the attic hatch has bleed around it of air leakage and also heat through the actual panel. And now we're going to do the importance test that is not a beautiful picture. May I?
Yes.
Alright, so we're at 20 pascals on the blower door. That number I want to be 20. Right now it's 18, which is pretty good. That is 9/10, so it's 90% outside, but it's still 10% inside. So that probably, now this is where you kind of have to take perspective into it. We know how much venting there is between the roof, the attic and outside, all these eave vents, ridge vent, etc. That's a lot of venting. So the fact that there's 10% of what you see between the outside and the attic is presence between the attic and the house. That can be kind of alarming. So now we want that number to become 20 all the way to 100% if you were gonna like hire somebody to do this.
So, but in order to do that, wouldn't you have to like get rid of all the venting?
No, you wouldn't. You're not going to mess with the connection of the attic to the outside. That's what you want. You want the attic to be outside. So what we're going to do is seal off all the air leaks.
So do you understand what he's saying? Like,
No.
okay, I didn't think you did. So what he's saying, what you're measuring right now when he does that is he's measuring the differential of connectivity between the attic, which should be the same as outside, exactly the same as outside, to the inside space. Attic should be completely outside.
Right.
Means it should be 20. Negative 20 means it's completely outside. The fact that it isn't negative 20 means it's not. It's communicating to the inside. Right?
Yes.
Restate that a better way.
Well, 0 is outside. 20. It's
Guys,
anyway.
I
It's
said
like
backwards.
I don't want to get technical. But
So if 0 is outside,
Well,
then shouldn't the
I don't want to. Yeah. The way that what you're in reference to is what we're kind of talking about right now. Brian's right. When we're standing inside, outside is 20. Really, in reality, outside is outside as an anchor. We're using it as an anchor inside.
Okay, I get
But
that,
it doesn't
yeah.
matter. What is important is that we want, when we drag the house down into this pit, we want things that are supposed to be not connected to the house, like the attic, not to get dragged at all down with it. But it looks like the attic is getting dragged down a little bit.
I'm with you. Okay,
which
that
means,
makes sense.
right,
Yeah.
that then there's a chain of reaction. So this is that wall connection that I was worried about when I was up in the attic, where the ceiling heights change, and it's not a problem. So that is awesome. It means that they put a block somewhere down inside the wall, and then they
How do you know it's not a problem? Because there's no fingers.
There are no fingers. Exactly. So yeah, I'm looking for the signature. I don't see the signature. I know for a fact that's not something to worry about. So don't come along and fix that, because that would be a waste. Like, you could fix it, but there wasn't anything wrong in the first place. So that's where we come into. Side attic is 16. So that's an 80% connection to outside, but still a 20% connection inside. So if you're going to fix one of the two attics first, side attic is where you want to start, because it's got a bigger connection to the house. Now, then we get into, like, somebody like me who gets really anal about this, is like, well, in the first place, yes, that's true, but in the second place, that attic is much more extreme in the shape, where it is within the height of the building. So that's probably more of an issue because it's at the very end of the house where the house is breathing in hardest. This one, the house isn't sucking so hard on it, so then you get into a little, like, you know, mind games, and that's why I take a week to build my report.
So it's more important to seal the house from the attic than it is to seal the attic from the outside.
Yes, because you
See,
want...
that's counterintuitive. Like, I would think I want to go spray a bunch of Icynene spray foam insulation on the top of the roof. That way it would make it cooler in there.
Well, and that is...
is that like conventional?
I am not a salesperson. I do not sell products. I don't fix things. So I have no... I don't care what product or solution we use. What I am here to tell people is that when Icynene, which is a corporation that is in charge of selling spray foam,
Right.
tells you that that's what you should do, what they're not telling you is that that attic is several thousand cubic feet of air. That if you're going to bring that inside, now the HVAC guy is responsible for cooling that. So if you're going to get mad at your HVAC guy now because the house isn't getting cooled because some of that cooling is now being sucked into the attic, which needs to be the same temperature as the house, blah, 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 blah. Now you have, and also potentially the Icynene company that installs that doesn't do a blower test. They charge you twice, 3 times, 4 times as much as a normal insulation job because they're selling you both insulation and air sealing, but they don't test their work, so you have no proof that they actually air sealed it. And now you could end up with moisture problems that are much more serious because the eaves maybe didn't get totally blocked, or your ridge vent doesn't get totally blocked, and now you've got condensation in there and you create more
Yes,
problems.
it's all clicking for me now. That's not a simple fix. I mean,
And I have a pretty strong opinion about it, which is that it's all or nothing. That's where people get really like, I'm gonna put some Icynene here. No, you don't put some Icynene in one area. You seal the entire attic and make it conditioned space.
Right.
Or you isolate it completely from the inside space.
Exactly.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Don't do, because that's what you see people doing all the time.
Right.
so would it be better to Icynene the top, or not the top of the attic, not the peak, but the bottom, the floor of it?
To somebody like me, no, it's not better because number one, it makes it impossible for you to get at any of the wiring, any of the ducting that's on the floor of the attic, and also you can do the same. You can get the same effect, air sealing wise and insulation wise, with much cheaper materials.
Cool.
Right. So that's where it's like.
Plus, we don't really we haven't really proven that Icynene is not going to kill you, have we?
Well, there's a...
Right. I mean.
Well, I mean, you smell it, right? I mean, I did put it in a section of my house that I did isolate completely. That we put a game room in, and you can still smell it a year afterwards.
Yeah. So let me show you this real quick. This is where we start getting interesting. Now that the blower door has run for a few more minutes, we can see that there is hot air, which is in the attic, coming out into the room through this piece of trim that's up there at the tongue and groove, right? That bit of wood there. And also, it's getting down into the wall. See this kind of pattern that's forming inside the wall where we get warm spots showing up? And especially there, you see fingers going down into this wall right here. That is a sign of top plate leakage. So we've got air leakage from the attic going down into the actual wall itself. And now we can do things like, for example, bada bing, look down the wall, and I can see that there is an air leakage terminal, which is called a light switch right here. And I can cover it up and create basically a closed door. Now I want this number to be 0. But when I cover this up, what I find is my blower door is at 20, this wall cavity is at 10. So the wall cavity itself is half inside the house and half outside the house as far as air connection is concerned.
Even though this is an interior wall,
exactly,
it's venting up through the top plate.
What's really going to freak you out is that when we go down to the first floor, where walls have no direct connection with the attic at all, you'll find that walls in the first floor down another 12 feet are going to have a connection to the attic.
Wow.
Which is totally insane. Yeah, so this is a sign of attic air leakage. Nothing to fix inside the wall, just go up to where the attic is bleeding with it, basically, and that's where we find that issue. And you can do this all over the place. We've got 2 things in here that I want to know about. I've got a duct, which should be totally inside the house. It should be 0. The top number should be 0. The top number is 1.7.
So that means
almost 2.
That means the duct or the taping somewhere. Again, not Bryan or that was the previous builder.
It was already there.
Right. It was not done, yes. And now in Florida and in every state, this is required. They have to seal these ducts. They have to test them. So that I wanted to be totally connected to the inside of the house. So this one I want to show totally outside. And it's showing 17. That is an interesting number because that is the number of the side attic. It empties into the side attic because it shows the same signature as the side attic. So now I can say, oh, that's interesting.
So we're dumping poo stank into the attic.
Yeah,
rather
which
than
is
outside.
also, yeah, right, which is more about the odor. It's more about like the moisture, etc. Also, there's no exhaust fan in the shower, which is like simple common sense. Air comes in to replace the air, goes over here, not over there. So any humidity that's in the shower is just going to stick around for a really long time, and you'll end up having some moisture issues there eventually, but not a huge issue. Likewise, in here, and I'm going to take away the light in here, but I want to test what is going on with these recessed lights. I can verify that they are connected to the attic, and this is 11, 12. So yeah, the guys who did the boxing out on the top did not complete the job. They did something probably, but they didn't, you know, if they had tested before and after, they could say, well, we did some, and they could show you exactly how much they did, but they didn't do all of it. And that's the thing, just like the obsessed garage way is, if you're gonna do something, do it right? So what Bryan's at all in.
It's just what I always end up doing, vaporizing money when I hire people to do stuff.
This is kind of fun. This is your thermostat, which is in charge of telling your air conditioner when to run. And the thermostat itself is on a wall that is halfway connected to outside. So, you know, on a day like today, when you've got cool air sinking through the house, getting down there, and the house is sucking in air from the top, this wall inside is warmer than the space is. So it might trick this thermostat into thinking like, oh, it's hot in here, but it's not hot in here, it's hot in here, but it's sitting on the wall. So it becomes kind of like putting on an exterior wall. And this is the kind of thing that's like, you know, really strikes home, because this is the control system that handles all the comfort systems in your house. And this is where HVAC companies like Bryan's are learning all about home performance, because they realize that even if they do a perfect job, they can't possibly make their system work properly if the house enclosure is shooting into the foot.
So one way to fix that would be to just insulate the wire that's coming into the...
So this is one thing that is our fault. That proves that behind that thermostat there's a hole that's been left open, and we should seal that hole.
That, but also it proves that there is air leakage up, because the wire goes up, right, through everything. So there's a hole up there, and that would be...
But wouldn't... I mean, caulk doesn't have a high R value, does it?
It's not R value.
Yeah, and that's why it's air sealing and insulation. There's generally two different processes.
Oh,
in the case of spray foam, they purport that it's the same process, but a lot of times you want to prove that it is. So in this case, it's not insulation at all. You've got plenty of insulation. You have thick walls. You got R19 insulation on your walls, most likely. You have R38 in your attic, probably in most places.
So it's air leakage that's the bigger issue than insulation.
Don't spend any more money on insulation at all.
Ah.
Just have somebody.
See, that would be my thought. I just insulate everything. Just start pulling walls out and blasting stuff in there.
Yeah, and air goes right through insulation is the secret, right? So if you can put as much insulation as you want, it won't fix the actual issue. And so this is the other thing. There's warm air coming out of the ducts, and the air conditioning was just running 10 minutes ago. And so the fact that there is warm air coming through these things can only point to the fact that they are bleeding air into the attic. So that's one way of diagnosing it. The other way is using the pressure panel like we did in the bathroom. And I could do that on every single duct and find out which one, you know, there might be one that's totally disconnected. You could find that with this tool. So for sure, you can see some fingers right here. So that is air leakage coming from the attic. And it's because it's shaped weird. So this is like all the little depressions in the tongue and the groove where they meet. You can see that air is coming through in each of those spots. But this nook does not have a duct register in it. So it's possible that air stagnates right in here, and you would be able to tell by installing.
Well, you can tell just standing in there, like in the summertime, it's just funky. Yeah.
So what we would do, if we wanted to really know what's going on, is install a data logger in this space, and then leave it here for like a week. And install one in this space and leave it there for a week, and then compare the two and see like, oh, okay, well, yeah, clearly we've got a...
So could one solution for this be just put a fan in here or something?
Yes. How, like, that, and then it's like, how exactly are we going to do that is the question.
A ceiling fan right there.
Air King right here.
Wow, yeah, like industrial fan, yeah.
So yes, there are a couple different options, you know. you could figure out, there's a product for everything, but the main thing is like having a professional, like Halo Services they have access, like I'm not a guy who knows about products. You get somebody who's an HVAC professional and they can say, okay, well here's the whole catalog of everything that's available in the world. Here's how we could put these things together so that they would have the effect that you're looking for, which is just circulation.
Well, and my take on this space is that it's created this little area of thermal difference between these. So it's fairly exposed. Mm-hmm. It's fairly leaky. And there's no ventilation or anything in this space.
Right. So could we put a return in there?
You could put. Yeah,
like, because if I leave that forever, I'm gonna have mold issues and water issues, and I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
the house is gonna fall down.
Part of my master plan.
Termites are gonna eat it.
Yep.
It's gonna be just bad. It's all bad. Bad, bad, bad.
So the other thing you can also do is seal it better, reduce the relative humidity, because we know that the relative humidity up here is the worst of all of the spots in the house, which is why I just turned on heat to dehumidify on your system, which will help reheat and reduce your relative humidity.
So we've got that duct that's pulling a lot of hot air.
Well, would it make sense that the roof, basically the tongue and groove is probably bolted right to the darn trusses or close to it.
Right. And yet, so we run the test, and even though it looked with the pretty colors, like it was a major issue, way worse than the other one, and I'm, by the way, not having a total airtight seal here, but that's okay, because on the other one, it wasn't a total airtight seal either. We've got basically the same reading, if not a little less, on this one than in the one in your bathroom. Right, so like this is where you can see something and say, oh, that looks pretty bad, but really you test it and it's like, okay, well the actual numbers show that it's a little bit different than what we thought.
So your ability to improve it is not there.
Exactly. Now the way we interpret these numbers is 1.4 out of 20 is massive. If I actually got to 50, that number would be about a 3 or a 4, which is like way leaky. That's about as leaky as you possibly have. So what we have just figured out with this number is it's not worth it, your time, to test the ducts anymore. Just go ahead and seal them. Don't waste money on more testing, because like I guarantee you, it will make a difference if you sealed them. That 0 is exactly what I want to see. So that means that even though this duct is in an exterior wall, which is bad, it's not good, it's not leaking to outside. It's leaking into the wall probably, but that's not connected to outside. So first floor wall, interior wall, 25% connected outside, 5 out of 20. And this wall has nothing to do with outside, right? I mean, it does connect over there, but the studs all go this way, so it shouldn't have anything to do with that. Exterior wall on the first floor, 3/4 outside, 75%, 15 out of 20. So now we can tell, like, you can tell things like, for example, if I stepped outside and I saw that there was a light, this switch controls a light which is in the same cavity, then I can say, oh, there's a path that's being traced by that. If there is no light or anything else on the outside of this, I could say, maybe the building wrap wasn't taped at the seams. So all kinds of stuff that you can kind of start to infer about the things you can't see when you actually have the numbers. So you can see a little bit of air leakage right there on the door.
On the door frame.
The door frame. Again, super easy to fix, not a high priority. That's just a little bit. Front door, not a big issue. The sun is shining on it, and so that's why you're getting this signature right there. But yeah, we're not too worried. Up at the top, though, you can see that there is some air coming in through the interior wall, which probably is due to the complex geometry of the attic space up there, the way that the ceiling is changing heights and there's that vault up on the second floor. That's probably, what we're seeing here. So again, when you see stuff like this that's totally inside the house, you want to go to the furthest point out and try and seal it there, because otherwise you could spend a million years going at every single little stop point inside of the walls. Well, there is conditioned space above this, but even though there's conditioned space above it, there is air coming through this. And that air might be heated by the light that's on right now, but the fact that there is air moving through it at all is an indication that there is some air pathway that's connected to outside.
So this computer, the room with the office here, is probably the most problematic. When I close the door, it gets really hot in here.
Okay, so you've got some air leakage, around the window. We've got the geometry in this room is a little bit complicated, right? We've got these little bump ins on both sides. These kind of bruisey looking things, so that's where insulation's you know, not completely covering, which is totally normal. That's just always what happens when you have more corners. Got some air leakage down at the bottom too, right? That's what the bottom plate meeting with the slab is doing. And so yeah, that becomes now where the air is escaping from the house and forcing the house to breathe in at the top of the house. Okay, so basically, if you were to have, like the next step after you do all this enclosure stuff, is to have an HVAC company do what's called a manual J calculation. And somebody like me does that too if you want an independent, but like they do it all the time where you calculate exactly how many BTUs, how many units of heat or cooling you need in each and every room in the house. It's possible that, it's very probable that the engineering on this house did not include a very detailed room by room manual J calculation. So this room probably just didn't, they split it up like, oh, this room will get this room will get that. This room happens to have sun exposure here, probably has sun exposure there a little bit. You've got a lot of windows, you've got a small space with this much duct, which may or may not push the amount of CFM that like an engineer would say you need this. So it's pretty easy with a computer program nowadays to do all this stuff, and it's not super costly. And you want to know how much heat, especially with two computers, how much heat do we need in here? Because if you're going to do stuff like this with it and have these run all the time, is that what happens? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Then yeah, you want to know that it's going to be hotter in here, so let's add more cooling.
Because what happens when the force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor, foot to the floor.